Hello, everybody. I'm Tarah Wheeler Van Vlack. I'm the CEO of Fizzmint and the director of Hack the People, which is the largest tech mentorship initiative in technology. I am here today for a very special event and joined by three unbelievably amazing people who are far better at networking than I promise you I will ever be. I would like to introduce Gina Phillips. She's the community manager for WeWork here in Seattle and a stunning contributor to the level, the tone, and the ability of people all around her to contribute to the community. Paul Watts, who is actually one of my fellow directors for Hack the People and a mentor and someone that I go to for personal advice when it comes to how to handle human beings in strange situations, and as well the CEO of Jolt Labs here in town and first officer for patent navigation. We're also joined by Greene, who is the organizer for New Tech Seattle, and I believe they're starting up a New Tech Bellevue sometime pretty quickly here too. And we're very glad to have him aboard as well. He's a partner in Project Bionic, which is the place to go to for your social media needs. What we'll do today is ask for each one of these folks to tell us about how it is that they network and why people feel, they may not realize it as much themselves, but why people feel better and happier after having talked to them. After we're done with that, I will open it up to some questions. You can ask questions for this Hangout at my Twitter handle right there, which is @Tarah. You can also use, and we prioritize this, the Q&A application here in Hangouts, where you can vote on and submit your own questions. And finally, if you're nervous or concerned about answering questions that seem a little personal, you can always email me personally at t@thetarah.com. Awesome. So I'm going to ask Gina to start us off with today and ask Gina to talk about something that she and I were actually discussing at a party the other day, her idea of what transactional networking is. And Gina, if you could tell us more about what that is and how to avoid it, that would be wonderful.
Sure. I think it's a lot of people's traditional understanding of what networking is, that you would show up to a place looking for a thing and looking for people who can give you that thing and not necessarily looking to connect or give back. It's just a quid pro quo sort of relationship.
Can you give us a good example of sometimes that this has happened before and how it makes you feel?
Let's see. I think I've been on both sides, but when you're at a networking event and someone is sort of vetting you for what you can do for them, you feel it very quickly, and they might try to get out of the conversation quickly once they decide that you aren't the person or in a position to give them what they're looking for, and it just makes you feel pretty used. And it's not a very genuine way to be approached.
What do you think the best way is that someone has ever approached you and not necessarily gotten you to do something for them, but just started a relationship with you that was based around contributing to your relationship in the community instead of that transaction? What's the best time you found someone to do that, and what did they do?
Yeah, well, I remember I've been surprised by the question, like, how can I help you? And that opens, it puts the conversation on a different setting, and that people are willing to help regardless of what you've promised to do for them yet. So that's a really nice approach and kind of a disarming approach that you don't always find at networking events.
What a wonderful way to do that. I also know that one of the things that you do, especially as the community manager for WeWork, and that I think that a lot of people really appreciate about you, is you make space available for people. You have something that you can do that doesn't cost you a lot, but is so important to so many people, having a place for their locations, their meetups, volunteer work, and I've seen you able to use a tool that you had that didn't cost you a lot, but you could really give to a lot of people as a result of it. Can you talk about, you and I have talked a little bit about this before too, and it was really important, I think, to talk about it.
Yeah, I think my approach to networking is generally connecting. So I know that, especially early on when I moved to Seattle and I was going to a lot of different tech events, it's not that I necessarily had a lot to give back except knowledge of other things going on because I was going to so many events. And so I think it just built from there that you might meet somebody and be able to point them to this other event that's going on or this person who just announced something, or even if I didn't know them personally. And so that's kind of how it started. And now I think I have much stronger relationships in Seattle and have a lot more resources available to me, like here at WeWork having this building, having this where we can host a lot of community events. So a lot of the value I think that I bring to networking is not necessarily connections to me, but being able to make connections for people to other people or resources.
Thank you very much. All right, Paul, you tend to be the quieter one often in larger groups, but I've watched you make connection after connection by making people feel comfortable with talking to you. Can you talk a little bit about what your networking strategy is and how you do that?
Oh yeah, well, just for a point of history, I'm a technologist by trade. I'm an introvert. I'm not somebody who grew up doing this. I think my first professional networking event was 4 years ago. And I was thrown in kind of the deep end. And the strategy that I came to develop through help with a lot of different people is, the start off is develop a genuine interest in what the other people are saying, what they're doing, and what you do is and to Gina's point, you build up the idea of finding out how you can help this person. And by not only it's great for introverts because asking questions rather than talking gets the other people talking, but it also finds out allows you to figure out how you can actually help. Again, if maybe you know somebody, maybe you can actually make those connections, and maybe you can provide some quick value to that person, and that's what actually gets people to remember you.
I know that a lot of the issues that people in technology have with networking often have to do with the amount of time that they perceive that it takes. And you, Paul, actually make a really extraordinary amount of your time available to people that you don't know that you might be able to help, or who feel like they just don't know anybody in technology, which it's kind of a rarity to see that. You say yes a lot more than the people that I know, but sometimes you do say no. So let me ask you, how do you prioritize your time when you're networking?
Prioritize my time. I tend to just try have a hard limit on the number of things I am allowed to do in a particular week. I mean, yeah, for me it's a lot easier to say yes. I'm kind of a natural person who likes helping, and so it's difficult for me to say no. So I tend to just say, okay, well, I can't go to coffee, however many times this week. I have to limit it to, 2-3 times. Sometimes I have to ask the person to come to me rather than go to them. So it's a matter of just trying not to nickel and dime yourself and be conscious of all of the time around that stuff that can really chip into a week.
Thank you very much, Paul. Let me ask Brett now. Brett is one of the biggest networkers in Seattle, and he's someone that everyone knows Brett. And he's done so by really contributing to the community in what a lot of people have noticed is a thoughtful way. You've created events, you've helped people make connections, and you deliberately set out to do so. Can you talk about you came from Denver and the big community there. Can you talk a little bit about what your strategy was to get yourself established in a brand new town and basically be the king of all of the tech networking in just a couple short years?
Sure. Well, I was born a relationship person and a connector, and for better or for worse, money is great, but helping people actually makes me feel better. So you need money, and you have to go for that too. But helping people has given me a lot more just happiness in my life. So it's something that's just in me to do, and that's how I ended up with a lot of Twitter followers when that first came out. And in LinkedIn, I have about 30,000 connections because I just proactively build it every day and have done it for years. And I just was lucky to be in Boulder, Colorado when the whole startup thing happened, and people started using the word startup instead of small business just because it was a tech small business. And a lot of things that the first leaders in that community did were things that I really responded to, and I noticed how it gave people permission, which was a big thing. When they saw multimillionaire venture capitalists setting up office hours where you could come talk to them for 15 minutes as long as you knew what you wanted, so you didn't waste their time, you had a specific ask and something they could help you with, they were happy to give their time, and they communicated to the whole community, I'm doing this to show you that we should do this. And that kind of it gave everybody permission to figure out, well, what's my thing to do? Maybe it's to start a meetup, maybe it's just to invite people to coffee. It's going to be different for everybody and what they want to do. So when I moved to Seattle 2 years ago, knowing what new tech had done for me there, I wanted to bring that here. I was just grateful that somebody else hadn't done it yet, because the original platform for this started in 2001 in New York City. So it's not that my partner and I are that big of geniuses. This is a format that's worked in a lot of cities, and it just happens that we both have a lot of event experience, and I've done events since I was 19 years old, so I like creating an experience for people, and our whole way of going about it is kind of what Gina and Paul were saying with networking. It's about giving first. We consider ourselves to be stewards of the event. It's not our event, it's the community's event. So there's things like name tags that we personally don't like at all, but people really wanted it, and so we did it. And a lot of people were getting jobs, and so we thought, well, how can we help people get more jobs? So we started making red name tags if you're hiring, and blue name tags if you're looking for a job, and white name tags if you're hanging out to have a good time. And so more people started getting jobs, and it was just to help the community, because whether we like it or not doesn't matter. What matters is that it's good for the community, and that's what makes people have fun and come back, and that's why we have 350 to 500 people a month who will come and who will tell their friends.
And you started with the name tag thing, the red and the blue name tags for wanting jobs and being ready to hire, which gives people a natural question to start any conversation with, which is just huge at a gigantic networking event, because you can always lead off with the question, so what are you hiring for, or so what kind of job are you looking for, even if you don't know anything else about the person and you're not one of the people looking to hire or get a job, which is really helpful, and I appreciate it, and I think a lot of people did really appreciate that move on your part. I can tell
a couple of tips real quick.
Yeah.
When we were talking, I was just thinking some things when I have coffee with people or I mentor people or they're asking these types of questions. Some things I've done, I learned from other people. I didn't make these things up, but they've helped me over the years. Just some basic tips to build more relationships and networking. If you download the Rapportive tool, Rapportive, to your Gmail, whenever you open your email, you see people's LinkedIn profiles and their Facebook. You can just hit a button to connect with them if you haven't. That's allowed me to really easily connect with at least 10 more people on LinkedIn almost every day. And anyone I meet in any situation, I get their email address and I say I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, and I do that immediately, religiously every day, to where I don't even think about it. It's just something like opening email that makes it easy. And when someone does something for me and I'm responding in an email, and again, I didn't make these things up, I learned them from seeing best practices of other people, I'll change my email signature. Instead of saying cheers or thanks or goodbye, I put it with appreciation. And because I noticed when that had happened to me, it actually made me feel good when I received it. I understood, like, this person really cared about what I had given to them and that it helped them out. And another thing is,
well, let me stop you, Brett, and have you. I need you to just write all these tips down right now. Okay. Throw them out there. Throw them out there, in fact, and put them on Twitter now and ask people to ask questions about it right now, and we'll keep talking about it through the broadcast. I do want to move on to the question and answer portion of it, though, because we could sit here all night long and listen to your set of tips, and they're all going to be profoundly valuable. I want to see you write a blog post on those sometime eventually soon.
Okay.
Let me ask. There's been a lot of people who are a little shyer who want to ask questions, and remember, on Twitter and on this Q&A application, it shows what your name is, and so I think a lot of people are a lot more shy on this one. I've got a really, really important question here. Now, before I jump into the Q&A portion of this, I want to finish off the introductions by saying the reason why we're doing this conversation about networking and technology is a concept that I've heard discussed an awful lot, which is the titanium silo of excellence. Every programmer wants to be so good, and every person in technology wants to be so good that they don't have to network, that all of their jobs magically come to them. That's not something that you end up doing, that you end up becoming without cutting yourself off from a lot of human contact. For most of the rest of us, 99.9% of people in technology, we have to know people in order to get recruited. You don't get to apply for jobs and get them anymore. Now, you are introduced by someone to get a job, and that is the way that it works. It's the single biggest way that you're going to get a job. And People often feel angry and hurt and as if they're selling themselves when they have to go to a networking event. They treat this as a chore and a problem and something that is disingenuous and even dishonest. This is not, and this entire conversation is not about being dishonest or disingenuous. It's about how to give and how to be part of a community so that people actually want to help you, as opposed to making them feel like they've been run over by a dump truck full of requests. So let's move on to the Q&A portion of this. The first person who asked a question wants to know why no one will ever call him back, essentially. He wants to know, he hands out his business card, he asks people questions, and he makes phone calls to people, and no one calls him back. And I would love if anyone here would jump on in. I know Paul and I have had conversations about people calling people back before. If anyone wants to jump in on phone calls as a method of communication and why people maybe don't call this guy back. Remember to unmute if you're going to answer.
I expected Paul to jump in, so I was just...
Oh, I can jump in. The one thing, without knowing, kind of, phone calls are a little bit of a sticky thing. One thing that whenever I send out emails, in particular when I'm sending out cold emails, or to somebody who I might not know, I will go back and look at what I'm reading and look at it as in the other person, and the test that I do is think about it from the person who is receiving it and ask, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times you're just asking something, and you're asking for some time of that person, and you want to be able to say, oh, what is in it for them? Because you don't want to just ask them to do something for you. It should be something more giving, or give and take than just take.
Gina?
I'd like to expand on what Paul said as far as requests that are made. I have generally a lot of people coming toward me asking, who are in search of jobs, and some people do it better than others. They're innocent mistakes, but I had a friend of a friend call me. We arranged it over email. I was like, great, you have half an hour of my time. We'll talk on this date. And then she asked me, hey, so I'm looking for a job in the startup scene in Seattle. Can you tell me about the startup scene in Seattle? I was like, can you be more specific? So it really helps if you're targeted in what you're asking for. I would have been much more able to help her if she's said, hey, these are the 3 startups that I've applied for. Do you know anyone there? Could you possibly make a warm introduction for me? Versus like paint this giant picture that could take hours. So to really be sensitive to what your ask is in a bite-sized chunk, especially if this is somebody who you don't know.
To ask a follow-up question to that, how do you phrase, Paul and Gina are both really, really right. 1, don't make sure there's something in it for the other person, and 2, don't take up their time if you don't have to. So let me ask you, how do you graciously say what is in it for them? What's a good example of someone who's offered you something and someone who's tried to not take up time? Does anybody have a good example of how to do that?
Paul?
I'll have to noodle on that one for a second.
I think it's not that people offer, hey, well, I mean, I guess a typical one is like, could I buy you a coffee and, hear about what you're doing, and, I have a few questions about the scene if you could help me navigate or something. So usually like offering to buy coffee is a typical pairing when you're asking for somebody you don't know to sit down with you.
That one's a little bit of a rough one too, because I turn down all coffee meetings ever. I get a lot of requests for coffee, and I know Brett and I have had this conversation too. I get a lot of requests.
Where did we have that conversation? Oh, it was over.
Oh yeah, I think it was over coffee.
Just saying.
Yeah. So how do you? It's kind of rough because saying you're going to buy them coffee is an implication that you're going to take up their time, and I'm kind of. It's a really hard way around it. Some people have different policies for it. I don't take coffee anymore. I'll do like office hours, but I don't do coffee, funnily enough. Is there a good solution to that?
Good question. Right now, I usually have people, like Paul was mentioning, come to me.
Yeah.
If they're the one requesting, then it's best if they can make it very easy for the person they're requesting time from. Certainly.
All right. Brett, how do you structure all of the people that want to meet with you?
I prioritize similar to what Paul was saying earlier, because we do have day jobs and we do have things that we have to do, and essentially I have a day job and 2 part-time jobs with New Tech Seattle and New Tech Eastside to run 2 monthly events. And I try not to turn anyone away, and usually the request is through email, so if I don't really have time, I'll at least give them some resources, either websites or an email introduction if I think it's mutually beneficial. Or the next step for me is I'll offer 15 minutes on the phone, because that is easy to do versus driving somewhere and sitting down, and even if the coffee is only a half an hour, you're talking at least an hour to an hour and a half between drive time and sit down time. So if I think it's basically how much benefit I think there is for them and how much benefit I think there is for me, and how that weighs out. And if they're just asking something simple, a lot of times 10 or 15 minutes on the phone will give them what they really want. Usually I'm not the direct source, but I'm a connector. So I know who they should talk to, or they should meet, or the event they should go to, or a website they should go to. So I'm kind of more of a resource or an information source for them, rather than I'm not necessarily the person that can invest in their company or whatever the specific thing is that they want.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here about how to leave uncomfortable situations. We're nerds, we're in tech, sometimes we're awkward. The question is from someone who was, she was in a conversation with someone who was invading her personal space and wouldn't let her get out of the conversation, and yet it was somebody who was higher up in the tech community and she didn't want to offend them. How do you get out of those uncomfortable situations? How do you end conversations in networking and move on to the next person without making the other person feel like you've just left them and moved on to the next person?
Well, I think that most people who go to networking events understand that it's a mingling event, and more times than not take it personally if you'd like to, if you thank them for the conversation and say that you're, if you would excuse me. But I think definitely, like I was talking about earlier, if you feel like somebody is ducking out of a conversation with you because they don't want to talk to you anymore, then that's a different kind of line. But I think excusing yourself to get a drink, or just thanking them for the conversation and excusing yourself are things I usually do.
I appreciate that. It's hard to get out of those conversations sometimes.
You just lead with, "It's been great talking with you," so that's giving something positive to go back. And I mean, from everything we talked about today, I think we all agree that the one magic piece of all of this is just give. It's actually really simple. If you just listen to what people want and you give first before asking, and think of how you can help them before they can help you. Even if you know they can help you, before you go ask, think about, well, how do I think I could help them? And even if you're wrong, you're making a warm introduction. If you said, "Hey, I know this about you and I was thinking this might be helpful." And even if it's not, you are still offering something positive, and you're starting in a good place.
I have personally found, and I'll jump in actually on this question too, I've personally found that if you ask yourself what you need, you have also found the answer to what a lot of other people probably need too. And I have asked myself questions like, I'm in a funny position. I wonder, if I could find somebody to help mentor or help coach me. I wonder if I could find some friends who are also in the same situation as me. I'm a poker player, like a lot of people know, and so on occasion I put together a game or two for people in technology who are also poker players who want to hang out and want to talk a little bit after work. And creating an event or creating a space for other people who want and need the same things that you do is giving back to the community, I think. I think that creating a place and a location and a time and just taking on yourself the job of getting the tacos and finding the place to sit down is a great way to give to people that you might not even know yet. You can develop some closer relationships that way. I have another question here, which is, this one's a little bit rougher. I have a feeling that Gina and I probably know a little bit more about this one. This is someone who's perpetually being asked out at networking events.
Oh, you think Paul and I don't have that problem, huh?
Oh, you're so cute. I'm sure you get hit on too.
No, you don't, but...
So it's a question of how do you, when someone is clearly hitting on you, what do you do? I think there's a couple of elements to that aren't just how to get out of the conversation, but what do you do in terms of who to tell and how to kind of curate the community. So, and this, I'm not specifically asking Gina. I know Paul has some opinions on this one too.
Do I? Oh, I would like to hear what Gina says first. I will.
Okay.
So Paul and I are on the board of Women in Tech together, and we talk about a lot of issues as far as, especially when you ask for meetings with people, they misconstrue. Oftentimes it can be a bit more awkward to navigate what expectations are. When you go to tech networking events, more often than not, there are more men than women, and women stand out. So it is easier to be the target of a different kind of attention. Are we talking about kind of unwelcome asks? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that in general, unless if you're wearing a sign that says I'm looking for a job, which you literally are at New Tech Seattle, then you're literally looking for a job. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that unless someone is literally wearing the T-shirt that says I'm looking for a date, it's probably not appropriate to hit on somebody in a professional situation like a tech networking meetup in the collegial situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say basically don't ever do it, ever.
Yeah, but that's not the problem. Isn't the person asking? It's the person having to deal with people asking.
Yeah,
which is harder.
Yeah.
So
I would definitely say, one thing. I'm not sure how you might actually get out of it, but I think depending on where it is, you should definitely contact the organizer. And because you're saying in most professional settings, they're not trying to create this atmosphere. And whether or not they actually have a specific code of conduct or a specific anti-harassment policy, that could be something that could come out of it, where you actually can improve the meetup for you and other people moving forward. But not having ever experienced that particular thing, I don't really have that many tactics to be able to get out of it.
Well, it also introduces an element of resentment. Like if that is the kind of attention you're getting when it's inappropriate, and then you kind of risk, offending them if you say no when you're trying to network for that job. It puts you in a really uncomfortable position. So I'm with Tarah as in it's inappropriate, but I think people will be people, and when they meet another human, regardless of the setting, that will definitely happen. So it's nice to be able to keep your cool in that situation and have a game plan going in if that's what happens.
All right, and we've gotten several other questions. There are variations in a lot of ways on a lot of these, so I'm hoping that the answers that we've been able to give a little bit more in-depth on these three major questions have been able to help. What we can do now to finish off today is if you have a single sentence that encapsulates your networking philosophy and the best advice that you could give to anybody else, please let folks know now. And I will go first so you get kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. Give the thing that you feel you need to other people. Is probably the best way I can put my own networking philosophy.
I would say pursuing connection versus transaction.
For me, it's that. Oh, I actually was not going to come up with something of my own. It's something somebody else said. A guy by the name of Zig Ziglar, and he said, "You can get all you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they want."
I'm going last, so you guys took them all.
Yeah, now you do a rap.
I mean,
Make it the best one. You can do it.
I can't live up to the pressure. And the Zig Ziglar thing actually went through my head, but I mean, we're all saying the same thing. It's just give. When you come up to somebody, just come with an attitude of giving instead of taking. And beyond that, if you want to go one step further, create something that gives to people. One of the philosophies that I took from being in Boulder that I was talking about was the basic idea that if you and one other person share an interest, have a meetup group. Go to meetup.com. You can set up a little group for free, and if 2 or 5 people are interested in something, meet up and see if there's something there. And if you build something and you get tired of it, hand it off to somebody else who has passion for it, and create things that actually give to people, and then that's what matters. I mean, what we're all for doing is some version of that, which is one reason why more people know who we are. Part of my philosophy that I forgot, I think, Tara, that you were getting at about starting an event coming here, was my first career was in the music business, and I was in radio, and I was also on stage and producing bands a lot. And I realized all these people would come up to me because they heard me on the radio and knew me that way, but they saw my face standing on stage. And so they knew who I was, but I didn't know who they were. But that taught me when I wanted to move here, I thought about that, and I thought I need to be on stage because I know I'm going to go meet people, I'm going to be in a room, but I need to be giving people something that's valuable for them and putting my face in front of them as the person giving. And sure enough, that's why
It's a wonderful way to put it.
here.
Yeah, so it sounds like
It's not, yes, it's a tactic, but it's also heartful. It's not manipulative. It's genuinely to actually give, not just to give to get something back from people.
That's the greatest way to put it, I think, right there. You're creating something to give to other people, and more than that, Brett, you're genuine about it, and I really appreciate that. Okay, if we've got nothing else for the day, then that is absolutely wonderful. Please tune in next week. We'll talk again on at Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Thank you so very much to Brett Greene, to Gina Phillips, and to Paul Watts. Please follow them on Twitter. I just tweeted about them. And I look forward to being able to answer more questions in the future. You can always send them to my Twitter account, and we'll all talk about it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tara.